Welcome to another episode of the Style and Strategy podcast. This week, I'm so excited to be able to be chatting with a longtime friend, Sarah Neill, who is the founder and CEO of MysTyler, the body positive social commerce platform helping women find clothes that fit, right? An area that's been of dire need that's to be filled. And Sarah has been the brainchild behind this particular platform. So Sarah has actually been driving marketing and innovation for consumer technology brands for 15 years and was previously on the founding team of Mint Mobile, which was recently acquired by T-Mobile for $1.35 billion. So when it comes to marketing tech, Sarah is your go-to. So Sarah, you were recently quoted as revealing that while 1 in 4 women are body confident, 89% are more body confident when they like their outfit. So that is a very significant statistic and one that really screams home to the work that I actually do when I'm talking to women around their personal brand and their style. And I absolutely love your ethos in that you also don't see fashion as being superficial and actually see it tying to mental health, confidence, and the impact that it has on us day to day. So today I look forward to you enjoying this episode with Sarah.
I'm Sonya, a personal brand and style coach. My journey began in the corporate world and through lived experiences has led me where I am today. I've walked in those uncomfortable shoes, faced the same challenges and questioned my path to professional success while simultaneously navigating my personal style journey and the challenges that each decade brings. I wholeheartedly believe in the fusion of personal brand and style strategy. My mission here is to provide you with practical, actionable strategies and lived experiences to help you unlock your next level of success through the power of personal brand and style. Let's get started.
Sarah, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out to have a chat with me. I am so excited to have you on the show because I feel like you and I have got very similar visions around what we want to try to do when it comes to fashion and style and really body conscious and positivity around the place. So I'm really thrilled to have you on today.
Yeah, and thrilled to be here. I always love chatting to you, Sonya.
As I. So let's maybe take a step back. I think you are an absolute inspiration for so many women in this, not only in what you've been doing in MysTyler, but actually from a career journey perspective. The fact that you've done all this work as, you know, an experienced marketing and technology person for the consumer technology brands and that experience, but then being able to transition into startup world, you know, because you really found this passion and drive around something you wanted to do. So why don't you share with me a little bit around your leadership journey from sort of that consumer technology side, and how did you end up getting to starting a startup?
Yeah, so it was never actually my intention to be an entrepreneur. My background is marketing, so I love people. I love, sort of diving into insights. And that's, largely what marketing is. It's really understanding who's your consumer, what do they think, what are the problems that they have, and how can you help them? How can you solve their problems? And so a lot of it is about how do I reach them? How do I communicate to them? But it also is, a lot about what are the problems and how can you solve them? And so you start to shift into product innovation, depending on the company that you're at. So I spent half of my early career on an agency side, so working for creative advertising agencies. And so there it much more is about execution and creative. But when you're on the client side, which I spent half the time on, it is a lot more integrated. And so often you can get the chance to actually change the product to make it suit the customer better. And so in that way, I became a bit of an intrapreneur. So I never thought about doing it myself, but I was kind of like an intrapreneur. Also, I think a lot of marketing is about execution. Yeah. So you just have to be able to get things done and deliver, which is like one of the key skills that you need to be an entrepreneur. But anyway, so I had been in marketing for maybe 10 years, like maybe a decade. And I'd moved to New York and I was running sales and marketing for a company in New York, a small privately owned business in New York. And I should say that my career has not been focused on fashion. It's all been focused on wireless and telecommunications. So like Telstra, Optus, Vodafone, back in the day, BlackBerry. Yeah. So that was my background. That was sort of like my area of speciality. And I was running a sales and marketing telco company in New York. And I had an idea for a product that I thought we could pilot. And so I went to the owner of the business and I said, if you give me a small budget, I can actually pilot this product. And I think we could have a lot of success with it. And I think we should just test it out. So as head of sales and marketing, I can do this for you. And he said, I think that's a great idea, but a great idea with someone who can execute is actually really valuable. I'm going to give you $1 million and I want you to become the CEO of this business, hand over your current job. You can keep your salary, keep your office, you can use our shared services and give it a go. And I was like, wow. And I remember even like I had to print out business cards. This is, 10 years ago. So we still had business cards. And I was thinking, I was like saying to friends, I was like, can I really put CEO on there? Like I felt like such a fraud stuff. And I'm like, I guess technically I am a CEO, but it just felt like so foreign. But anyway, that was like an incredible opportunity to do that. And I found a creative team that built the brand with me. I found an agency that built the website. We ultimately then hired a team and then brought that all in-house. And within 5 months, we had developed a beta product that we launched and we got like a bunch of PR around it. And the product, I should say, was in Telco. It was essentially a SIM card for global travelers that allowed you to roam and get data access.
Oh my goodness.
More cost effectively. So this was in the days when like 78% of people actually I think it was like 90% of people turned off cellular data when they traveled because there was that risk of like a $20,000 phone bill.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's incredible.
Yeah. So we had a lot of success. We launched properly a month later. We had 10% week on week growth of our revenue, which is insane for a startup.
Yeah.
I'd never also been in the startup world, so I technically raised $1 million, but I'd never been out pitching and trying to raise money. I just was given that $1 million. I didn't really understand. I knew that we were doing well. I didn't know how well we were doing. But now, knowing what I know now, 10 years later, I'm like, holy crap. Like, we were like, a superstar.
That's insane. Yeah.
But that all came to an end very suddenly when this investor he gave me 4% equity into the business. And so when you go into startups, you do want to control, you want to have a controlling stake because it is your baby. It is you who is like living and breathing the business. It is you asking for favors from every single person you know. It's you managing relationships. And so you need to have control, which I did not. He was going through a bunch of stuff in his personal life. It just became too much for him to manage lots of different businesses on the side. And he decided that he was going to focus on enterprise business only and shut down all the businesses he had that were consumer focused. And I had 2 weeks to shut down the company. And I was looking at whether I could buy the business off him, but obviously I didn't have very much money. Or, do a transfer of assets. And people were saying, like, he should just give it to you for $1, like if he's just going to shut it down, it doesn't cost him anything to do that. But he just was in a mindset of like, I've just got too much on my plate. Any legal paperwork is too much for me to look at. Like, unless you can give me an offer for $5 million, it's not worth it. And again, in hindsight, I probably could have found a $5 million offer for the business, but I didn't know that. And so 2 weeks later, me and our team sort of like had, our last day in the office. We basically refunded customers any unused credit, and we left and we went and got a bottle of champagne and just had a toast to what we'd done.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I didn't know that part of the story. And I mean, this is the beginning of the journey, really.
Yeah.
But there is so much kind of in there that I'd love to just touch on really quickly, which is one, having the initiative really at that young age to just go up to your boss and say, hey, I've got an idea, and, present it in a way that actually your boss goes, yeah, here we go. Here's $1 million. And if we think about the time frame of when that was so significant. Well, like Was there any, like, what would you say from a courage perspective, an initiative perspective? Was all that kind of running through your head going, should I bring this up? Shouldn't I? Or did you not even think about it at that time?
To be honest, like if I'd thought, oh, I'm going to pitch this idea and try and raise $1 million to become a CEO and run this business, I would never have done that. Like I was not that ambitious,
Yeah, yeah.
But thinking, I could just do this like little pilot or something just to kind of like test it out. Like I thought about it in a very small way. So, I think because of that, I wasn't, I didn't think it was that big a deal.
Yeah.
And, marketing, a lot of it is kind of like taking something and being like, hey, I have this idea for this campaign, like this is what it's going to cost. This is the time. This is what resources we're going to need for it. This is how it's going to flow through. It's kind of like what I was doing already.
Yeah.
I guess he just saw it in a different way. And we obviously, it was obviously a very stressful time, ending that. And he also was not based in the US, so I didn't see him very often.
Yeah.
And we really didn't speak after that point because it was kind of like, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
But crazily, I was in San Francisco earlier this year and I ran into him on a staircase. So this is like maybe 11 years later. And I was like, oh my God, his name was Michael. Michael! I was almost like, that is Michael, right? And we ended up catching up and we went out for a cup of tea and we like chatted for 2 hours and we had a really like nice time. And he sort of did acknowledge like that he wasn't being super patient and had a lot on his plate. And I guess it was as close to an apology as he could get. But it was actually just really nice because I didn't know whether we would ever be able to.
Yeah. It's like you finally got closure on that piece. Yeah. So you've gone through this journey. You've created this business which had, 10% week on week sort of growth as well. You've got to the end of that journey. And then what were your thoughts next? Like, what's next?
And actually just one thing I also want to say on that is like, because we were trying to find a way to like, I don't know, like save the company, we didn't give customers much notice. We basically gave them 48 hours notice. And so these are people who are using our service to be connected while they're traveling. So it's a pretty like essential service. So I sent out an email and I was like, hey, everyone, I'm so sorry that we're giving you such little notice. Like we honestly tried to save the company to the last minute, but unfortunately we're shutting down. You've got essentially 2 days notice to try and find another solution and we will refund anything that you haven't used. And I was expecting to get like a barrage of like, hate mail. And we didn't get anything negative. We got emails back from people saying, thank you so much for giving it a go. Like, is there anything we can do? One person said, if I carry a sign saying save Doodad, the company was called Doodad, if I carry a sign called save Doodad down the streets of Paris, will it help? It was just really beautiful. And I had an incredible creative team. Like this guy, Zach, who's a copywriter, who's like phenomenal, worked on the brand. The brand was called Doodad and our tagline was when in Rome. Like, so cute. And then everything about the brand I loved. It was like, if you need help, email us, like you ask your mum, and if she can't help you, then email us at I need help at Doodad. But we've really been very intentional about being very human, very fun. And so I think, when you think of a business doing you wrong, it can feel very like you feel disconnected and you can get angry at them. But when you feel like there's actually just people on the other side that are just human trying their best, I think people have a lot of empathy for you. And that's always been something that I've wanted to do with anything that I've worked on, is kind of like have that relationship and have that authenticity and transparency for the brand. So anyway, cut to shutting that down. And I'd actually already been booked in to speak at a bunch of conferences and it was all paid for. So I decided to still go. So I went to a couple of conferences and one of them was in Dallas in the US. And I basically was like, hi, I'm Sarah, the CEO of Doodad that shut down 2 weeks ago. And this is my experience setting up and shutting down an MVNO, which is this sort of industry term. And at the end of that, this guy called David approached me and he said, well, who do you work for now? And I was like, no one. He's like, how are you in the country? I'm like, as a tourist. So who's paying you? I was like, no one. And he's like, okay, well, I've got a company. We're growing really fast. We need someone entrepreneurial to come in and help us out. Potentially we can help you relaunch that brand. And he'd sort of been watching along and he'd actually reached out to me in the past and I just never got back to him because I was very busy when I was running Doodad. So anyway, that business was called Ultra Mobile. And 3 years later, we created a brand called Mint Mobile.
Yeah.
And those two brands just got sold for $2 billion to T-Mobile. So I was there for 6 years on the executive team, working across every facet of the business. In the last year, I was also doing a chief of staff role, so working very closely with David across all elements of the business, from like product to operations to finance to marketing. And the first company, Ultra Mobile, was like the fastest private growing company in America. It was like the Inc. magazine has this list of the Inc. 5000. We were number one on the Inc. 5000.
Wow. Okay.
That was so just to give you some scope, it's a brand that nobody's ever heard of, but it was like we did 118 million USD in revenue in our first full year of operations. So it was like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of my tenure there, we brought Ryan Reynolds on to be an owner of the business. So I did the Ryan Reynolds deal.
And that's when you were involved in the right.
Yeah, I led that whole deal. So that was really exciting. And it was kind of like, you know, you work for a company that nobody's heard of. And there is kind of like an element of being like, oh, it's cool that, you know, my friends have actually heard of the company I work for now, you know. So it definitely just like got so much excitement through the business and put us on the map. And I left there to start MysTyler because I, through the experience of Doodad, was like, oh, I actually can be an entrepreneur and I'm actually pretty good at it. And when you know that you can do that and then you have an idea and a problem that you want to solve, it's very hard to like not want to just get started solving that problem.
Yeah.
So I eventually, after 6 years, had like 6 years of entrepreneurial energy built up. I couldn't start building MysTyler from the US because I needed a visa to be in the US.
Cool.
And so I needed a job and someone who could pay me and someone who could fire me, which was the way that Doodad worked out. Because I had such a small ownership in it, I was able to be fired and I didn't have controlling equity. So I had to make the decision to leave the US to start MysTyler and to leave this rocket ship that had been so great.
Yeah.
So I did that and I got back to Australia at the end of 2019, so in time for Christmas 2019, started working on MysTyler full-time in January. And then 2 months later, it was COVID and we went into lockdowns. So
what a journey. My goodness. That's only the beginning.
Yeah. And so then how I pivoted into fashion, and it's kind of ironic that I'm now like the CEO of a fashion company because I would never describe myself as fashionable. I was never the one who enjoyed reading fashion magazines. Like I just don't notice the trends. I never know how to style things. I'll be wearing something and my friends go like, they'll pull down the sleeve and be like, that's supposed to be off the shoulder. And I'm like, oh, that looks so much better now. Like, why did I not know that? But like for some people, it's just like, they just, I don't know, they just know how to zhuzh things and like style them. And I just, you know, for me, that's just never been intuitive. But 10 years ago, 2014, I was thinking I often don't like what I wear, like frequently.
And you're not alone. I know there's many women out there.
And it's just crazy. And I was like, I'm in New York City. I can get away with literally wearing anything. So it's not like I have to wear like, you know, super corporate. I could be wearing jeans. I could be wearing really fun things. But I don't wear fun things. I wear really boring things. And half the time I feel like I'm inappropriately dressed and I just feel uncomfortable. And, you know, like when I'm at an event, I want to like, I'm thinking about what I'm wearing as opposed to thinking about what's happening. Yeah. And so I decided I need to invest in myself and I need to invest in my wardrobe and I need to just, you know, get some outfits that make me feel better that I can just wear as a uniform. And so I recruited my friend also called Sarah and I was like, Sarah, you always know what looks great. Like you always know how to put things together. You always look immaculate. You're ahead of all the trends, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go shopping and pick me out some outfits. And then I very quickly realized that she had no idea how to dress for me because I'm tall, skinny, brunette. Yep. She's like shorter, curvier, and blonde. And she has spent her entire life perfecting the art of dressing for her body. And she knows exactly what suits her. And she had no idea. Like the things she would pick up for me, I'd be like, that will never, like I'd put it on and I would just look ridiculous. And so I thought, okay, well, how do I find somebody who looks like me that is more fashionable, like that's already doing the job of like going out there, trying things on, styling them, and then I can just copy them.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was like, again, like the age of the blogger, and, Instagram like was newish. And so I was going onto Instagram trying to find people who looked like me to follow. But it's really hard because even if you see someone who proportionately looks like you actually have no idea, because like I'm 5'8", they could be 5'2", and they proportionally look similar to me, but like things are going to look a lot different on me than them.
Exactly.
And so the whole idea of MysTyler was just essentially, how do I find, like, if you can find the people that are already shopping and styling for your body, then it can help everybody find like the brands, the items, and the styling that works for them. And the person that you follow doesn't need to be a fashion influencer or a stylist, because they don't need to be trained, because a stylist like you know how to dress lots of different bodies.
Yes.
Somebody who's not a stylist, they may not know how to dress anybody else's body but their own, but that's actually all that's relevant for you if you're trying to get dressed. And so that was the idea. So MysTyler, I registered the domain in 2014. I created a development brief, and I actually started speaking to developers about how much it would cost to build out MysTyler, which honestly, it didn't change much from then to launching it. Like, it's really like it stayed true to sort of like what I wanted to achieve. But yeah, so like I had 6 years of I guess informally validating the idea, like chatting to friends all the time about this idea, MysTyler, and my friends would be like, out of all your ideas, MysTyler's the one that we want you to build. And what also resonated was even my fashionable friends that I thought would need this were like, oh, I would also love that. So it was, it really resonated to everyone. And it just made a lot of sense to me.
For sure. So just take me back a second. The fact that David found you, back when he did, the fact that you then were able to, we'll touch on MysTyler a little bit more, but, garner some support and backing around, when you really established MysTyler, how much of that do you really put down to your personal brand and experience over those years? Do you think that played a bit of a role for you, as well as your grit and determination?
Yeah, I mean, so I applied to a program called Antler, which is in the world of startups. So startups are really fragile. And so there's a very, very high failure rate of startups. And so you have these things called accelerators or incubators. And you can think of an incubator like a baby incubator. It's designed for something fragile to look after it. And so in an incubator, they're like, what does a startup need to thrive? So maybe they need a co-working space. They might need a peer network. They might need advisors. They might need coaching. They might need money. And so incubators are essentially like, they'll take high potential businesses they believe in. They'll give you an investment and give you like 3 or 6 months worth of like these facilities, like the coaching, the advising, the space.
Yeah.
And so they're a really great place for a startup to launch, because you do have that support network around you. And especially if you're a first-time founder and a lot of this stuff is new, like it's really helpful to kind of have the experience of those around you going through it. Getting into these things is still hard. And so definitely like having been a serial entrepreneur, I guess, by this point helps, because honestly, like startups are really hard. And like there'll be multiple times, if anyone has a business, that you'll think, why did I ever think this is a good idea? Because it's, it's like, why didn't I just like take a salary and like enjoy vacations and have weekends and
sick days?
So it's really hard. And so I think, if you have done it before, first of all, that it's hard. And so you probably, you're going to be less likely to like give up when it gets hard, because you already knew that. And then you have a bunch of the training. But you can also go into these things from any sort of background. But definitely they love to see people who have either done it before, or it could be that you're from like an industry where you could be a lawyer and that the tools that you use as a lawyer are XYZ, and this one tool is great except for this one thing that's super, super annoying. And because you're a lawyer, you have this unique insight into a problem to be solved. And so then you can bring that to the program, and so that becomes really valuable as well. Like, so you can be a subject matter expert that can identify something very niche, or you could be like a serial entrepreneur. But definitely like, I mean, you can come out of university and have a great idea and be ready to go. And there's also benefits of that because, you know, especially if you still live at home or you're like in like very
Yes.
like low cost, you know, co-living situation, it's great to have like a very lean base when you're a startup because you're not going to get paid very well. But definitely like having experience is, you know, really well regarded.
And so now, if you reflect upon sort of this journey that you've been across, how do you think maybe your brand or your style has it evolved over the years?
I think, I mean, one thing, I mean, I came from advertising. So, for instance, like George Pat's, you know, I was looking after Telstra, and you create a campaign and you have a copywriter and an art director, and then it goes to the creative director to get signed off, and then it goes through 17,000 iterations, and then finally you have like the final piece, and then it has to go through quality assurance, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, there shouldn't be a full stop at the end of this thing, so it needs to go back to the creative director and the team and then back through the whole process again. Like you have to have like such high attention to detail, and I was always like, they'll still get the message if it doesn't have a full stop. You know? So I've never been the perfectionist, which, you know, like, you know, when you are in that industry. So I think that definitely lends itself to being an entrepreneur. So I'm very much, you know, like comfortable with launching things that aren't perfect if I think they're better than they were before.
Yeah.
And I'm also very comfortable. And I think, yeah, this has definitely like evolved over time, like knowing that there's value in better as opposed to holding off until it's perfect.
Yeah.
I also think there's huge value, and again, more and more so, like this is really important to me, is like to have like an open dialogue, to be human, to be accessible, so that you can have more conversations with the people that are interacting with your product or service.
Yeah.
And also just so that you do have that forgiveness, like, you know, oh, it's not perfect, but rather than like, you know, hating on them, I'm going to reach out and tell them that something's broken, and they'll be like, thank you so much. Like, let's fix that.
Yeah. Rather you be honest and upfront about it, and you can have that open conversation. Yeah. And so now with sort of that growth in MysTyler going from, I know you're still really in that startup, but you've grown significantly sort of from where you first sort of started. What do you think in terms of the role that MysTyler plays in the whole fashion landscape and the influence that you've now brought out to, especially from a retailer, to bringing the consumers and overall just in terms of body positivity, etc.?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we first launched, we had what's called a cold start problem, which is when you have a marketplace, you need to have products and you need to have customers. But then which one do you have first? Do you have products without having, you know? So we had the same problem where we needed to have creators, we needed to have content on the platform so that we could get users because we had something to offer them. But then it's hard to get creators on the platform when you have no users. So what we did is I created a database of celebrities. And so I tried to find as many celebrities as I can that where you could publicly find their data. I could find their height, their chest, bust, waist size, their hair color, their eye color, all that sort of stuff. And I really wanted to focus on to be as diverse as possible, just because I wanted to have any person who tried to use this app would have a good experience because they could find somebody who represented them. So from the very beginning, I was very intentional about being diverse. I was like, you know, tall celebrities, short celebrities, curvy celebrities, skinny celebrities, you know. So that was always like, you know, part of the plan. But I think I underestimated, you know, why that was so important, which is the world of fashion is not representative.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like the average model, you know, looks like 0.01% of us. So it's not that some of us don't look like them. It's like almost all of us don't look like them. So, you know, we're all trying to like buy clothes off someone who doesn't look like us and then try to imagine how the thing's going to look on us. And even, you know, like there's, you know, the physical attributes of our body, but there's also age and, you know, people going, well, that's on a 20-year-old. But, you know, as someone turning 50 this year or someone turning 60 this year, is that appropriate for me to wear? Because I need references that show me that acceptable for me to wear, even though I know that, you know, it's like wear whatever you want, but
There's
you know,
still
many
a
of us
side
were
of
looking
you.
for guidance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, when we first launched the app, so we started with celebrities, and as soon as we launched, we started getting users, and we also started recruiting creators, because now we could show creators this is what the app looks like. If you join when we go live, you'll essentially be on this feed. So 6 months later, we had our first 180 creators that had applied, and they added 4 posts. So we had 180 creators times 4 posts ready to launch. So we launched that to the platform, and immediately we started getting feedback. First of all, like, we blended them in with celebrities. So it was like you'd see your celebrity match, then a creator, then a celebrity match, then a creator. And the feedback was, I have to skip through the celebrities to find the real people, because the real people are like what's valuable. And interestingly enough, when I was pitching investors, they were like, okay, but of course people want to follow celebrities, but why would they want to follow real people? I was like, no, they will. And so then it was just nice validation.
Yeah.
But secondly, we started getting emails like that this was the first time they'd seen themselves represented in fashion, like the first time. You know, we had this one email that was one of the first ones that came through that will always stick with me, and it was a woman, and she said, I have felt fat and ugly almost my entire life, and now at the age of 76 I feel human, thank you. And that was just like incredible to just think that people have, you know, been in this world that has made them feel crap for so long, and it's such a simple solution. And so that we got a lot more along that theme. Like, you know, it's great seeing like the curvy girls out there. Again, also just like seeing women of different ages featured. So, you know, I think it's always, you know, the job was always to help every single person find content that's relevant to them. But really, like, we're doing so many other jobs that were really like just broken in the world of fashion. And we haven't done it for a while, but we used to send out a survey every 6 months and ask people, you know, how would you rate your body confidence? Has your body confidence increased since using MysTyler? And 86% of users say that they're more confident just by using MysTyler. And it's a combination of, one, seeing all these amazing people that look like them, and it's like, wow, you look like me, and you're confident and you're stylish. And so not only do you look great, but I could look great. But it's also seeing the diversity and actually seeing like women of all different heights and shapes and sizes and ages and colors, and being like, oh, that's right, we look very different and I fit into this because we all fit into this. And so definitely representation has become really, really a passion for me. Actually, one thing that I'm working on at the moment is, if you Google the average dress size of someone in Australia or in America, like take America, for example, you're pointed to a publication from 2016 that's using data from 2010.
Yeah.
And Holly Richards, who runs Ample Folk, she wrote an article in Refinery 29 about Australia. And it's like, in Australia, like the data comes from like the Australian Bureau of Statistics Health Survey, and they ask for your waist circumference. So it's like the data out there is really poor. And so, you know, here, like, I don't know who's making decisions, but making decisions without having the data about what women look like. And so we have 360,000 body profiles. And so we know, like, actually in the US, the most common dress size on our platform, so we have 44,000 profiles in the US, the most common dress size is an Australian size 20.
Wow.
In Australia, at the moment, it's a 14 and then it's a 16. But, you know, this is very different to, I think, what we imagine or what
what's
media
getting
and the general
shown to
person
us
imagines.
in media. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think just, you know, making data transparent and making, you know, just putting representation on the forefront is like super important and is just very empowering. Not to mention, one of the biggest issues in fashion and sustainability is just that, you know, 40% of what gets purchased online gets returned.
Yeah.
So that's like a lot of shipping and packaging and handling and a bunch of stock that they can't resell that goes to landfill. So just by getting the fit wrong, it's like one of the most unsustainable parts of fashion. So if you can just improve fit, it's huge. And so again, on our platform, we are brand agnostic. So we're just kind of like, if you're a creator, you just post whatever makes you feel good, whatever brands that is. If it's a brand that has an affiliate program, affiliate marketing is a way that you can get compensated for driving traffic. So if they have a program, we'll sign up to it. And so on some of our links, we can make a bit of money, which we share with the creator. And one of the things that affiliate marketing does is it says they don't want anyone to game it. So they're basically like, if you have a 30-day return window, then we won't pay out unless the item has not been returned by day 31, which means that on transactions that use affiliate links, we can see return data. And the returns through MysTyler, 4%.
Right.
So it's like
compared
10
to the
times
average.
lower.
Yes.
Yes. And so like the size of fashion, if you can reduce the return rate, if we could reduce the return rate by 5%,
Yeah,
it
the
makes
impact we
a
would
huge
have.
impact. So
Yeah.
I think there's some really exciting stuff there about like how can we actually just make shopping a better experience, so that rather than going to a website and scrolling through and be like, well, that's not going to suit me because I don't have big enough boobs for that one, and I'm too tall for this one, and XYZ, and trying to find the things that will suit you. Imagine the experience of going on and being like, oh, everything here suits me. Which one do I want? Or what do I like? Like, that's much better. And then you get it and it fits and you can wear
Even
it.
better, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. So, Sarah, I've got 3 quick fire kind of questions for you. So, if say you had an event to go to, or you just really wanted to feel empowered, and I would define it as your signature style piece, what is that piece do you think that would truly represent your brand, and why do you think it's an essential part of your wardrobe?
Unfortunately, like the irony of this, and I keep thinking I need to actually get better at fashion because now it looks like the product doesn't work. but I'm always like stuck behind a computer, and but no, I would say I have like an amazing black dress that's kind of like, it just hits just below the knees, and it's got a really like nice sort of cut sort of neckline. And I wear that if I bought it actually for one of my first speaking gigs, and it was kind of like a bit of a splurge purchase, and it just makes me feel so chic. And it's one of those dresses that I feel like you can dress up, you can dress down, so you don't feel like you're trying too hard, but then it just like looks really great. So that's definitely like one of my like power pieces.
Love it. Okay. And then, so for those listeners looking for a little bit of inspiration, are you maybe currently, or have you read a book lately, or maybe listened to something on Audible or a podcast that you would say has had a significant impact in the way that you've sort of run your leadership journey, your entrepreneurial journey, that you would recommend at all?
From an entrepreneurial perspective, this is an older book that I read a long time ago, but I honestly do think it's one of the best books. It's called A Lean Startup, and introduces a lot of topics that people might have heard about now, like MVP or minimum viable product. But it's this whole concept of just like, rather than trying to get things perfect and then launching and realizing people actually only use 10% of your product, launch the first thing you have and get feedback, and then build based on what people actually want, so you're not wasting time.
Absolutely.
I think that's great. And then my friend Anna Lazinski runs a book club based on innovative books. And so you read this book and then you discuss it for an hour. And it's fantastic. And yeah, we had our book club. I just joined. We had the first book club yesterday, but the book was called Co-Intelligence. And it's written by a Wharton like business school professor. And it's about AI, but it's written from somebody who's not technical, but really has been exploring like the applications of AI for a very long time. So it's like a very accessible book. It's very easy to read, and it helped me understand AI so much better than I had before. And it even talks through like, the style of prompting and the things you can do and how you can improve your own use of AI and how, anyway, I highly recommend that for anyone who wants to understand AI a little bit more.
I love that. Definitely very topical, obviously, as AI is everywhere at the moment. So everyone's got to really get on board and just understand and learn how to use it properly. And then finally, the third one is, we all have those days where we need an extra boost. And I know in the entrepreneurial world that you've had, and the ups and downs that everyone faces, what is your quick sort of maybe mindset ritual that you'll go to help you feel like you can tackle anything again?
Honestly, a really good song.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's your power pick song or your uplift happy song?
I love the Robin Dancing on My Own.
Ah, yes.
That's such a good one. Honestly, like put your headphones in and just like pump up some music, or even if I'm working, I'll just like play some music in the background. But I honestly don't generally listen to music when I work, but that's such a good tool. And my best friend is a psychologist, and she's always talking about like when you find things that make you feel good, like a song or like a food or a texture or whatever it is, like add it to your mental toolbox so that whenever you are feeling shitty, you can just like go to that toolbox and be like, oh, I have a list of things that make me feel good, or massage or whatever it happens to be. And then just like, give yourself permission to indulge in those things when you are feeling crappy.
I love that, Sarah. Thank you so much for that, because I really enjoy the terminology, your mental toolbox, because then it's there and you just go and pick it out. You don't actually have to think about it. You just know you're in this other zone and you just need something for an uplift. So if someone wanted to connect with you, find out more about MysTyler, I will have a whole bunch of details in the show notes, but do you want to let them know what the best way to find the MysTyler?
Yeah, so you can you can download MysTyler from the App Store or Google Play. So it's MysTyler, MYS, and then Tyler, TYLER. We're on Instagram. It's probably like the platform that we use the most. So it's mys.tyler. If you want to reach out to me, it's Sarah with an H at mys-tyler.com.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time out to chat with me today. There's been so many gold nuggets along your journey that if you haven't thought about writing a book or putting that in in the list maybe for 2028 or when you get that 5 minutes, I do think it'd be a really interesting read behind the scenes, or at least a movie deal.
I'll add it to my to-do list.
Definitely. But thank you so much. I've absolutely loved chatting with you today.
My pleasure, as always.
Thank you so much for being part of this inspiring episode. If you found value in today's discussion, please don't keep it a secret. Share it with a friend on social media, tag me at Your Style Collective, and leave a review. Your support means the world. Join me again next week for another empowering episode of Style and Strategy, the Leadership Series. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, you're already taking that first step towards your transformation journey. See you next time.